My leg.
My leg! 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 1, 2, 3, 4!
What is up, fuckers? We are back with another fantastic week of football and fantasy, about to hit the ropes. I know, although some of us, including me, may have not had a fantastic week last week, but we got to keep the hopes up. We got to remember that this is why we do the whole thing. The rise and fall of emotions, the happy and sad days, the laughs and cries, it's all part of it. You gotta remember that even the sad days are fun times in comparison to not having it at all. Which, honestly, kind of coming up as fast as Christmas is coming up, the end of the fantasy season is also coming up. And I'm almost getting like post-season nostalgia already. I don't want it to end. I know this is the last week for 4 of us in the league this week. I'll be going over our chances of making it into the playoffs a little bit later in this episode. But just coming to think about the fact that we've already gone through 13 weeks since the beginning of the season. It's been a whole lot of ups and downs for everybody. But it's been a fun time, I think. We had 3 league meetups. And we have 1 final league meetup left. In the only league news that we have pending for this week is our league awards ceremony will be taking place on January 13th for the wildcard playoff game that happens at 5 p.m. It's going to happen at Buffalo Wild Wings on Las Vegas Boulevard in Warm Springs. I'll give them a call in advance, or whatever needs to be done. I'll make sure that I can be there early enough so that we have a table so that all of us can be there. But it's going to be a Saturday night, 5 p.m., wildcard playoff game, January 13th. And the reason why January 13th works so well is because the final week of our playoffs in our league is going to be December 30th, the week of December 30th. So that's going to give me plenty of time to be able to order the plaque for the winner, put it on the Derriere Destroyer Award, and have it prepared for the dinner. So everybody mark it on your calendars because this is going to be our final league meetup for the year. It's not going to be for name points. It's just going to be for camaraderie and memories of the good times. Whether you are the first place champion or the last place pink license plate loser, Edwin. I hope all you guys show up and we can have one last time watching some football for this season until next year comes up for our fantasy league. Now, this season isn't over yet. I have 3 episodes left, which means that we have a Thursday night football game to review happening a little bit later today. The 2-10 New England Patriots featuring Bailey Crappy are going to Pittsburgh to take on the 7-5 Steelers, but with Kenny Pickett ruled out, it's going to be Mitchell Trubisky at the helm. The over and under for this game is the lowest game of the season, 30 points. And the Steelers are 6-point favorites at home. Overall, this game is basically the definition of they couldn't flex it out of prime time. Honestly, it's going to be a fucking barf fest. And the fantasy league owners in our league who have players in this matchup reflect that exact same thing. On the Steelers side, it is me with Jaylen Warren. Eric has Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson. Edwin has George Pickens. Donnie has Freiermuth, the tight end, and Greg has the Steelers DST. On the Patriots side, it is me with not Ramondre Stevenson because he went out last game, stepped onto the field, fumbled the ball, and then got hurt, finishing the game with a negative point differential. I'll cover that a little bit later in the league matchups, even though I don't want to. But, as you can see, we have some Steelers players, and I assume that a lot of those guys are going to be on the bench with Mitchell Trubisky at the helm. And on the other side, we have nobody having a Patriots player. Overall, with this over and under, my prediction is I'm going to take the Steelers at -6. They're going to clap the shit out of these fucking Patriots. The Patriots have scored a total of 16 points in their last 3 games. Now, before we move forward, I also wanted to show some love to the W-Dub Club. Edwin, Eric, Raul, Christo, and Chef. Now, going forward in review of the league matchups from last week, we're going to start it off with a pretty healthy clapping of a final score. Edwin at 3-10, facing Donnie at 5-6. The final score being 138-110. On Edwin's side, Jordan Love, which is a emerging good quarterback, finished with 267 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco had 110 yards and a rushing touchdown. Mike Evans had 162 yards and a touchdown. Nico Collins had 191 yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery with 66 yards and a touchdown. Overall, Edwin's team went off. On the other side, Donnie had Jared Goff, which had a decent kind of game. 200 passing yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Tony Pollard had 66 and 1 touchdown. Jerome Ford had 19 rush yards with 33 receiving yards, but a touchdown to finish him at 11 points overall. Jamar Chase had 149 and 1, and Amon-Ra St. Brown had 49 and 1. DeAndre Hopkins also had a pretty decent game with 75 and 1 himself. Overall, this was a pretty good matchup on both sides, but Edwin's roster going off was too much for Donnie's team to handle. Next up, in another pretty close matchup that had a couple lead changes throughout the game, Eric finishing at 8-5 went against Greg finishing at 5-7. Patrick Mahomes had 210 pass yards and a touchdown, although he threw an interception. Christian McCaffrey had 93 and 1 with 40 receiving yards on top to finish him at 19 points overall. Deebo Samuel, though, the storyline of this week from that matchup with the Eagles, which was one that everyone was watching and keeping track of. Deebo finishing with 116 yards, 2 touchdowns receiving, with an extra touchdown rushing. On the other side, Sam Howell had 2 rushing touchdowns, but threw an interception with 127 pass yards. Zach Charbonnet had 60 rush yards with a touchdown, and Tyreek Hill had 157 yards with 2 receiving touchdowns. All the other players on Greg's side, though, failed to even reach the 10-yard benchmark. Honestly, none of them even broke 7 besides Ezekiel Elliott. So overall, the matchup went in Eric's favor. Next up, I really didn't even want to talk about this matchup. Honestly, once my team suffered those 2 injuries, I turned off football because I knew that my momentum going into the playoffs was all gone and my hopes for this game were just absolutely obliterated. So I didn't even look at the final score until later on in the week. After these matchups at 7-6, went against Raul, finishing at 10-3 with a final score of 118-74. A fucking mighty all healthily clapping. Justin Herbert fucking sucks fucking dick. Ramondre Stevenson fumbled the ball and left the game. Jalen Warren fucking sucks dick too. CeeDee Lamb is the only player that had any hope. But fucking Tank Dell got hurt. Juwan Johnson sucks dick. Both of them gave me 0 points. And none of it really fucking matters. None of the rest fucking matter. Congratulations, Raul. Enjoy your 10-3. I was really excited for this matchup. I thought that I had a good chance. And that's football. So I'm not going to take anything away from Raul and his hell of a season. So, best of luck to you, my friend. Next up, in another high-flying matchup with a close finish, Henson finishing at 6-7 with Cody doing the same. Final score of 128 to 120. The winning team featuring Dak Prescott, who is looking unstoppable going into the rest of this season, with almost 300 pass yards and 3 touchdowns. Joe Mixon had 66 yards but 2 rushing touchdowns, and Puka Nacua had 100 yards and a touchdown for himself, as well as Jake Ferguson, who had 77 yards and a touchdown. The Chargers defense also had themselves a game with 6 fucking sacks and 1 fumble recovery for 22 points altogether. On the other side, Brock Perfect had 314 pass yards and 4 touchdowns, and that was not enough to lead Henson to the victory, despite Etienne with the touchdown, Pittman with the touchdown, Devontae Smith with the touchdown, and Evan McPherson with 12 points. Overall, both of these players are ending up at 6-7 and hope to continue their luck with finishing strong this week to carry themselves into the playoffs. And in the lowest scoring matchup of the week, we had Vaughn finishing at 6-7 versus Christo finishing at 8-5 with the final score of 97-69. Nice. Russell Wilson had 186 pass yards and a touchdown, but threw 3 interceptions. Samaje Perine, who Vaughn started for some reason, finished with 0.6 points. Swift finished with 2 points. Jalen Waddle finished with 5 points. Rashee Rice finished with 6 points. And DeAndre Hopkins finished with 7 points. Overall, a pretty low-scoring affair for Vaughn's side. On the other side, Christo had Jalen Hurts showing out with 2 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing, with 298 pass yards. Kyren Williams had 86 rush yards and a touchdown. And James Conner had 2 touchdowns with 106 yards to cap it all off. Now, for this next segment, I wanted to share something very interesting that I found that I thought you guys would also find interesting, and it has to do with the stats of our league. So, here I have a prediction of the odds of each team to make it into the playoffs. Now this is taking into account each team's score, and it has run 10,000 simulations of each matchup for the team's average score and the standard deviation. So as you can see, Raul is locked in as the number 1. He's statistically, there's no other chance for him to make any other position besides the number 1 seed. Congratulations, my friend. Next up, it's Christo. His odds of making it into the number 2 seed are 72%, which is looking really good. His odds going into 3rd is 21% and 4th is 6%, and he statistically cannot make it any lower than 4th seed. I'm up next with my odds of making it into the 2nd spot at 15%, the 3rd overall seed at 35%. At the 4th seed, I'm at 49%, and I virtually have no chance of making it any less than the 4th overall seed. Now, Eric, his chance of making it into the number 2 seed is 12%. His chance of making it into the 3 seed and the 4 seed is right around 44%. So it's basically a toss-up whether he's going to be in the 3rd or 4th seed. Henson, his chances of making it into anything above the 3rd seed are only 0.08% to make it into the 4th, which means virtually impossible. His greatest likelihood is to finish at the 5th overall seed going into the playoffs at a 62%, with his chances of getting 6th at 10, but his chances of getting 7th are higher. So at 19%, his chances of getting 7th place are more than double his chance of getting 6th place. So it looks like, Henson, you're either going to be in 5th place, most likely, or in 7th place. Next up, Chef has no chance of making it into the top 4, but he has a slim chance of making it in 5th place with the 14%. His highest likelihood, though, is to finish at the 6th seed at 41%, with his percentage of the 7th seed probability not too far behind at 30%, with his chances of finishing 8th seed overall being at 12%, which is equal to Vaughn's probability of finishing at 5th overall seed, aka 12%, with his likelihood of finishing in the 6th seed at 30%, but his highest likelihood finishing 7th seed right out of the playoffs at 41%. He does have some likelihood of finishing at 8th overall, though, at 15%, where we are now making it into the guys kind of hoping to make it into the playoffs. Greg's highest percentage chance of finishing overall is 8 at 62%, although he does have a 19% chance of sneaking into the playoffs at the 6th seed. He also has a 9% chance of making it into the 5th or 7th seed, but overall, he's hoping that he has some help to make it into the playoffs with that 19% chance at the 6th overall seed. Now, the funny thing about our next two guys, though, is that this program that has supposedly run 10,000 simulations has Donnie and Edwin at 100% 9th and 10th place finish. So this is going to be really interesting to see if that's how everything ends up. Donnie's going to be 100% chance of 9th, and Edwin is 100% chance of 10th. Now, another thing I found interesting was this schedule comparison tool, which is a matrix that runs vertically with each other's schedules, and horizontally is the schedule that you're looking at. So mine is on the number 1, which I'm at 7-6, and you can see that if I played my schedule, I would be 7-6. If I played Christo's schedule, I'd be 8-5. If I played Greg's schedule, I'd be 8-5. If I played Donnie's schedule, Raul's schedule, Eric's schedule, and Chef's schedule, I would be 8-5. If I played Vaughn's schedule or Henson's schedule, I'd be 9-4. And if I played Edwin's schedule, I'd be 6-7. Now, it's interesting. You can run this whole matrix down. You could probably pause the video and look at it and highlight some interesting things. But one thing that I found interesting was if Raul played Greg's schedule, he would have finished 11-2. And unsurprisingly so, if you look at the comparison of what our schedules would have been if we played Edwin's schedule, none of them are a winning schedule besides Henson and Raul. All of them are a losing schedule, which is to say some relief to you, Edwin, that you've played all the hard matchups this year. Now, before I get into everybody's favorite segment, aka the power rankings, I wanted to show you guys what I'm using to look at all these stats and stuff, just in case some of you stat nerds, Donnie, Edwin, I know you guys will probably have some fun with this shit. So go to theFFHub.com and then select NFL, and then and then enter the league ID for our league is 6149384. Put that in as the league ID. You can put whatever name you want as the name of the league because it'll just save it here as more options. And then you can look at all of these statistics and stuff that I'm playing with. But I think now it's finally time for... So, the power rankings from this website, which has its own algorithm, as you can see on the bottom here, features Raul at number 1, with Christo at number 2, and me very, very close behind at number 3. Henson sits at number 4, with Eric at number 5. Chef is number 6. Vaughn is number 7. Greg is number 8. Edwin is number 9, and actually Donnie is number 10 on their power rankings, even though they have Edwin finishing 100% last and Donnie finishing 100% ninth. Anyway, that about wraps it up for my third to last episode of this season. The last one is going to be extra special. But for now, I hope the best of luck to all of you guys that are hoping to make it into the playoffs with whatever circumstances you need to work out. I hope that nobody has to suffer through any more annoying, horrific injuries that happen to our players that nobody wants to see. I fucking hate the Eagles, but I don't want Jalen Hurts to be out for the season. So let's keep an eye out how these matchups go for this week, and keep an eye out for next week's episode where you'll see me on the Fantasy Freestyle Podcast.